Start pretty. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have Shaun Griffin, our Nevada State Poet Laureate, and we're going to talk about all the wonderful things that you do. I was reviewing your biography, and it is really, really extensive. Hello, my name is Sophia Chirk. I am the Artist Service Specialist here at Nevada Arts Council, and I'm so excited today to talk to Shaun. Shaun, I'm going to go ahead and read this really impressive bio, and then we can jump into chatting with you a little bit more about what you've been doing. Okay, so Shaun Griffin was the co-founder and former director of Community Chess, a nonprofit agency serving children's and family in northern Nevada since 1991, and the former founding director of the State Homeless Youth Education Office. His memoir about his long journey to build community in rural Nevada, Anthem for a Burnished Land, came out in 2016 from Southern Utah University Press. Shaun has spent a lifetime trying to build bridges where there were none for all members of the human community. During the mid-80s, he worked in Stanford University foremost community outreach program, serving several disability initiatives on that campus. He later found a minority youth outreach program at Ford University in the San Francisco Bay Area. In 2004, he received the Mike O'Callaghan Humanitarian Award, named after the former Nevada governor. Because he had tried in vain to stop the Yucca Mountain in numerous hearings, he started painting, sculpting, and writing poetry against the site. This work was exhibited in a multi-artist show responding to the environment at WNC's XS Gallery in 1991. Since then, he had held several exhibitions of watercolor and poetry throughout the state. His painting are on the covers of two of his books and his most recent exhibition of paintings and poems, Border Stories 2021 to 22, on the U.S.-Mexico border toward the state for 6 months. In 1999, he started a poetry reading series at Reno Sundance Books and Music to celebrate National Poetry Month, a month-long series of reading by regional and national poets, including the late Sam Hamill, Sherwin Bitsu, Jimmy Santiago Baca, Tori Gillimore, William O'Daly, Rebecca Sarfley, Gary Short, David Lee, and a host of others. This was in 2023. In April 2023 was the 25th anniversary of the reading program. In 1999, he began a biweekly radio program, A Writer's Word, a podcast on writers and writing that aired on Spotify, which just had its 106th episode, and this was in 2023. For 30 years, he taught a poetry workshop in Northern Nevada Correctional Center and published a biannual journal of their work, Razor Wire. He regularly contributed poetry, essays, and translation to literary journals and was editor-at-large as Kalapuya. I hope I pronounced
Yeah,
it.
that's right.
Yeah, Kalapuya. Yeah. And contributing editor at Weber Studies. He is the author of 7 books of poetry, editor of 2 anthologies, 2 memoirs, a book of essay, and translator of a book of poems. He edited a book of essay on the late poet and critic Hayden Carruth,
Uh-huh.
From Sorrow's Well, the Poetry of Hayden Carruth, released from the University of Michigan Press in their Under Discussion series in 2013. He received the Rosemary McMillan Lifetime Achievement in Arts Award in 2006, awarded by Sierra Arts Foundation, Reno, Nevada, and the Governor's Award for Excellence in the Arts in 1995. In 2014, he was indicted into the Nevada Writers Hall of Fame. Shaun, that is an unbelievably impressive bio. I'm so honored to read it, to
It's
be
embarrassing,
very,
but
very honest. We're ready to begin. And folks joining us, if you have any questions for Shaun, please welcome to raise your hand, chat them in into the chat, and we can grill him about all the work that he does. Okay, so just to get the conversation started. Shaun, what drew you to poetry initially, and how was your relationship with writing? How has your relationship with writing evolved throughout your career as both a poet and a community advocate?
Hmm. Well, first of all, thank you for the humbling and embarrassing intro. You didn't need to read all that. My mother will give you, major props, but she's no longer with us, so thank you. very much. Um, yeah, I've been writing all my life since I was a boy. In grade school, I wrote short stories. It was only when my teacher could get me to close my mouth. And I've just, I started writing poetry in high school. I fell in love with a girl who still doesn't know I exist, wrote her a poem, and I knew something had happened there that was magical, and I kind of kept with it, and then kept taking classes in school in college, and just trying to find my way into the art form. I did not get an English degree or an MFA. I studied with many wonderful poets, and they were great with me, helping me learn and become my mentors. Um, but I chose, as what you shared showed, to work with people all my life. And so, to answer the second part of your question, I spent many years trying to figure out how those two things would come together, and wondered for years also if they were not, if they were different. I think I was about 40 when I finally figured out that they were one and the same, and that my work really informed my art, and they were never two things. What I write is typically it emanates from what I care about, and what I care about is making this a more humane place to be. So that's for everything: the painting, the poetry, the prose. It doesn't really matter. And so those things have sort of germinated and continued to coalesce. I think the last book of poems, it maybe came together in the strongest way, and that the artwork and the subject matter were very much related to um, the kind of crazy world we're living in right now, which is so sad.
Yeah, thank you. So you've dedicated significant time to bringing poetry workshop to Nevada correctional facilities. Can you share a little bit more about that for those of us who are not familiar with that part of your work? Can you share what inspired this work and perhaps like a memorable moment that illustrate poetry impact on incarcerated individuals?
Hmm. Well, that's really become sort of my focus recently, and of course, for many many years teaching out at the prison. Um, I started a long time ago when I used to teach for the college. They had a program at Northern Nevada Correctional Center, and so I started volunteering. No, actually, then I wasn't a volunteer; I was a teacher for the college, and I wound up taking over a friend's English class when he had to leave. I taught in that English class for a couple years, but I finally didn't like it because grades were involved, and I felt like people were coming for the wrong reasons, meaning to get out of whatever else they were doing. So I just sort of stopped, and I said, those of you that want to continue without grades and without good time credit, meaning they can get time off their sentence or any other reward, just come to read, write, and learn. I want to work with you. But if you don't want to do that, I don't want to work with you. And a handful of guys stuck around, and that was, I don't know, early 90s, late 80s. And so since then, I've been doing that workshop. Um, it has evolved immensely, and many great things have come out of it. Also, a lot of deep sorrow and tragedy, as you can imagine, after 3 decades of work in the prisons. But the men have done everything from books to memoirs to, radio, television interviews, everything. So yeah, they've made substantial progress. And then as part of my poet laureate role, my major product is to try and get a creative writing workshop in all the state's prisons and hopefully camps. And we were in 4 prisons now, and I think 2 camps. So that's life-saving. That brings people an opportunity to have agency, to get their humanity back, to get literacy. From the state's perspective, it reduces recidivism, it lowers costs, lowers the temperature on the yard. So it's a win-win. Um, I've had a couple hundred guys, probably more, I can't remember, in my workshop over this time, and almost all of them have stayed out of prison, which is unthinkable because the recidivism rate on almost any prison yard is about 60% or higher. So it's really a simple sort of equation. Do you want to spend 50 grand a year to house somebody, or do you want to spend a minimal amount to train and teach a volunteer to enable these people to have some kind of new life where they can express what they're experiencing and hopefully be better prepared to stay out when they get out. So that's really the kind of nexus of what we're trying to do and why it's so crucial. We're also at a great moment in the state because the director of prisons, his deputy, and many of the nonprofits are working very hard to change how things work in that system. And everybody is in support of doing this at this moment. We've gotten many good bills passed in both recent sessions of the legislature. So it's a powerful force, and people are moving forward with the humanity of everyone inside involved. So that's huge.
Every time you describe or share parts of this program, I get so emotional. Like I get teared up because it's such important work and it is through the lens of art. Like you said earlier, like it there is no difference. Like those two things, the community support part and the art itself, it's the same. And I really wish like more people understood the inherent quality, like in the inherent quality um and the things that art can do, besides being a, yeah, besides
Very
being
much so.
decorative and
Yeah. No, it's intrinsic, which is so powerful. You asked if there was a poignant moment. There are many, many, many poignant moments, but I can tell you, many times the men have said to me, "You literally saved my life," meaning this ability to speak and write and express myself and and acquire literacy has been life-saving. And that's, you know, because let's be real, prison's a rat hole. And so when you're in that mess, you can't really see a way out often. And when you have the opportunity to do something like have expression, however that is, manifests itself, music, poetry, art, drama, it, it's it's it is life altering. And for whatever moment, that 15 minutes, that 2 hours that you have to be present, fully present, which is what I spend the majority of my time teaching the men how to do, you alter your reality because of that perception. You are a new, fresh human being. You are alive. You have all the capability that you've ever had. And for a moment, you're not somebody else. You're in this new person's mindset and you're acting accordingly. And I mean, you know, your colleague Stephen printed some of the poems the guys wrote and put them on poster paper in the lobby of the legislature this past session. I wish I could tell you how many times people who worked there called me or told me people were sobbing when they read those poems. I wasn't even near there. And that's because they're so powerful, because they have something to say and it's valid and it's meaningful. And, when we started, we didn't know anything. We were dumb. We were naive. We just had an idea that it might work. And I had some great teachers, but they have a vein and we tapped into it and they expressed that. And their artwork is equally profound. We have multiple art shows and other kinds of shows. And they got their voices on paper, and their voices were really potent. Juan Felipe Herrera, the former U.S. Poet Laureate, did the jacket quote for one of my guys that was in my workshop who's been out for some time now. And I don't think he was being facetious, but he said, he writes in the manner of Dante, which is like the highest compliment he could be paid, and not somebody that would give away those compliments easily. So that's the power of their work, and it means something. It's potent.
yeah, I have some follow-up questions about it. So
Yeah.
you did a lot of, and you connect with a lot of legislature to get legislation passed. You're working with different nonprofits. You're really kind of the bridge to make all this happen. Um, was it difficult to approach someone or convince someone the power of this work, or do you just show them the work because the work is powerful? Like every time I encountered it, like I already mentioned, I get tear up because it's so powerful. Like, has there been any friction? Do you need to like really convince them? Or I guess the other question is like, what are some of the biggest roadblock to get this working, to get this where it is now?
Yeah, it's never been simple or without work or effort. For almost all of this time, I volunteered alone. I had no association with any college or any other organization. I wasn't a religious affiliate or anything like that. So during those 3 decades, when the administration changed, and some were better than others in terms of being proactive about any kinds of rehabilitation on the yard, my life changed, meaning they would or would not be openly supportive or all the other problems that could go with not being supportive. So yeah, I had to learn very quickly just to be a duck, right? If I let all the little things that happen when you go out to work there bother me, I wouldn't last it. I would just quit because it can be it's like 1,000 paper cuts, and you finally just say, I'm not going to do this any longer. So I just had to really relax about it and go to kind of a Zen place and forget that, whatever else was going on in the yard didn't have anything to do with what I needed to do, which was teach out there and be there, present for these people. And so I really worked at that to enable me to continue. This is an example of what I'm talking about. It was mostly the chaplains that protected me, or at least gave me purchase on the yard, like they would for the religious and other volunteers. Uh, One day, just before COVID, I walked to the gatehouse with the last chaplain before he left. Um, and I said, many men in the workshop want to do art, like painting. I don't care what kind. And I said, I know people that can come teach us who will volunteer. I know people that have been inside who are great artists who will come teach this. Give me permission, run this up the flagpole, give me permission, and I'll get it done. And there was a long silence, no words to me. Just before we get to the gatehouse, he stops and he turns to me and he goes, Do you know how hard I've had to work to keep you in the yard? And that should answer your question. So, when the administration's great, hey, it's carte blanche. When it's not, I'm perceived as a threat. That's not the case anymore because the only way I could get in after COVID, several years after COVID, was to work through the college. So I do. I'm a volunteer through the college. My classes are offered by a continuing ed, and still no credit, no grades, and no money exchanges hands. They come because they can. So we have cover now, and they're all for the administration is all for more classes on the yard because that does all the things I mentioned earlier that makes the yard so much better to work on, live on, and get out of, right? It's a win-win, which led to the starting of the Nevada Prison Education Project now 3 years ago, to basically increase all of the access and resources and literacy tools on the yard. And it's all the people doing college work inside, volunteers like myself, people who've been inside, advocates, et cetera, and we're all working together to make the work inside accessible and to make books and learning and reading and all things that will give everyone back their humanity and their dignity, much more readily available. And that's what we're trying to do.
That's great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Community Chest. You were the co-founder of Community Chest. Can you tell us a little bit about that program? You work with homeless youth, and like how did that work connect to the work that you're doing now? Because when I read the bio, it felt like they were two different things, but then hearing you talk about them, they're very similar. So can you share a little bit more?
In 91, my wife and I founded Community Chest, which was at that time a small rural nonprofit trying to build resources for the people in northwestern Nevada, and specifically, the surrounding region, maybe the surrounding 30 miles. Um, when we started, we were in the middle of our lives and basically didn't understand that we couldn't do this work, so we naively blundered in and and worked really hard to build this community agency that was devoted to trying to change the systems that maintain poverty, inequality, uh, all the things that keep people down. So, as you can imagine, that's equally difficult in a pretty rural place. Um, uh, there's some very good reasons why we still have hunger and why we still have homelessness and why we still have poverty. It's not, those are not things that couldn't be solved tomorrow if we chose to do that. So, anyways, that's what we devoted our work to doing. And, over the next 20 years, actually, that was 30 years, we built we just kept working harder to make more and more resources available. And the organization spread across most of northwestern Nevada from Tonopah to Fernley, all the way east to Carson. And the staff grew immensely. And I spent almost 2 decades raising a lot of money to build a comprehensive community center where many of our programs are housed to this day, public health, mental health, child care, library, many other resources, domestic violence counseling, etc. And then we're replicating that across the state in these communities that I mentioned so that there are resources there, because what happens, unfortunately, the further east and south you go, the resources become fewer and fewer. So if you have a mental health crisis in the middle of Nevada, or even a public health crisis, meaning you have a heart attack, the likelihood of getting seen or treated quickly and efficiently is small and maybe not even existent. All the rural hospitals in Nevada are on life support. So that's why we're trying to do this work in those communities so we can build up local resources to address these issues, and have had a great deal of success in those places. And now, the organization has grown immensely. I stepped down in 2017 as the ED. Um, we both, my wife and I both, of course, support them and help them whenever we can because it was our flesh and blood. Um, but to answer your question, that work is no different than the work inside, right? Trying to change the system that maintains incarceration for all the other wrong reasons is no different than the systems that maintain poverty and hunger and inequality. So those things don't go away. So, you know, you have to know that, this is life work, and that's also why much of it doesn't get done. People get tired and they get worn out, and you have to have, an ability to just believe and walk in faith that there isn't really going to be, a big a big rainbow at the end of the road. It's going to be incremental justice that you see, and maybe not for a long time. I mean, I think we worked for 10 years up here when we started the organization, just to get to sort of credibility and moral authority. Um, we were seen also, or as you can imagine, perceived as a threat. People don't like to be told that we have to make change. And again, we had we been any smarter, we probably would have just left. But flash forward to now, the communities we work in depend on us, need us, and it's a reciprocal relationship. It's a symbiotic relationship, one we want and cherish and are grateful for. And so, it's like anything, but these struggles are nothing compared to real struggle all across the globe where, people's lives are at stake. So we live in a first world country, at least for many, not all. So, we keep reminding ourselves of that. In 2001, we took a sabbatical, my wife and I and our kiddos. and the neighbor kid. And we lived for extended periods in Northern Ireland and South Africa. And we did that intentionally to learn from the people trying to make change in those places, where the resources are so few and the stakes so high that we could maybe take the examples that they taught us home to figure out how better we could do what we do. And that was life changing. When you're in South Africa and you're in a shanty town, which is a terrible euphemism for extreme poverty, you realize what's at stake. And it's not a bunch of dialogue. It's people's lives trying to survive, trying to eat, trying to find enough power to cook whatever they're going to cook or wood to burn it, to burn, to eat it. Um, so, you know, you put things in perspective. And the same with the sectarian violence in Northern Ireland. We learned a lot from those people and what they're going through and what they've been through. And that helped us formulate what we could do and how we could do it better when we came home. And so we tried to put that on, put our beliefs into practice, which is extremely hard to do. We weren't perfect. We're just people. But we aspired to make that kind of social justice here locally and in this region so that people could thrive. And I kept teaching at the prison all this time, and I just that was the one time during the week when I was grounded and I didn't feel like I had a bunch of extraneous information in my head. And I really loved that work and I still love it. So that's what I've done.
Thank you. I don't know if I saw a hand up. If you had a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand or chat it, or type it in the chat. And by the way, if you're attending, we are giving away copies of Razor Wire. So please make sure that you maybe you can you can send us your email or we can reach out in a little bit, but just stay on the call so you can get a copy. Shaun, you mentioned like working in rural Nevada and bringing more community care and community resource um, to places that doesn't have it. I want to ask you a little bit about how this landscape and the place that you live, because the longer that I am in Nevada, the more I understand that it's a very specific place. Rural Nevada is a very specific place. And how does that like influence your work, being where you are?
Immensely. I write an awful lot about place, family, and my work. The physical place has had a dramatic impact on me. I mean, I can't imagine not, I can't imagine creating whatever it is that I write without it being anchored in this physical place. I've just finished a memoir on teaching out at the prison for all these many moons, and it's this physical place is in that book deeply. When the guys get out and they get paroled, they go to these rural communities, some of them, and they have to find a way to exist and live in them, and that's so hard to do. They're outsiders, they're outcasts, they're not perceived as being welcome, or couldn't possibly not perceived as being welcome. And so, how do they make this transition to a rural community that isn't like Berkeley or LA or Chicago or New York, where they will be anonymous and there will be support systems? I mean, basically from here, that is the Eastern Sierra, further east to the Rockies, it's wide open. There's just very little here. Um, and so making sense of that environment and the lives of all these people is really difficult, again, where there's so few resources. For me, though, the physical place is so powerful. It has so much. And when you first come to Nevada, I grew up in LA, so I was a city boy and I didn't understand what was here. When you first come here, you've heard all the sort of stereotypes about it. But as you take time with the place, it opens up to you in a way you couldn't have seen it before. The light that happens here throughout the year, um, the quiet and how vulnerable you are in that quiet. the animals that live here, the flora, they all of this stuff begins to speak to you that you just drove through for years. You didn't see it before. And it doesn't really matter to me if I'm talking about Las Vegas or the outskirts of Las Vegas or the middle of Nevada or eastern Nevada or northern Nevada. All of them are specific regional sort of biospheres that have their own ability to be to impact the senses. It's difficult to see that when we pave over these environments, but all of them are very special habitats, and those things impact me deeply. I can't remember exactly, maybe 20 years ago. I walked to the end of the strip, the southern end, just about to the airport. There was no hotels there. None of the big casinos were there. I walked back to where it was desert. And I wrote a poem to my late friend Stephen Liu, one of the great poets from Southern Nevada, about that, about the environment physically changing before our eyes and the desert that he lived in having given itself up now to become a parking lot. You know, when I when I hear people say things that are not particularly kind about Nevada, I just try to listen and remember that it's a physical space that you have to slow down to appreciate. If you don't, it will not be what it is that can be for other people. It'll just be a place that looks brown. It doesn't have water. Um, it looks inhabitable, etc. But all of it is sort of a foil. It's not real. And so the place itself to me is extremely interesting and a place that I feel the most stilled in. And that's true. That's been true since I was a boy. When I was a kid living in LA, the only way I could be happy was to leave and go into the desert or go into the mountains. I couldn't physically be happy until I was in a quiet space. So this is, but I understand it's not for everybody. We just have to make do here. We have to make it as best as we can for others and trying to make this an art a place where art also thrives is a tall order. It people people love the idea of art, but it's hard for people to say and do the next things that make that possible, right? How do we support it? How do we build a culture where this is something that's embraced and relished and needed, most importantly, needed. People have been reading for now hundreds of years, and they read because they need to, and they hear stories because they need to. The oral tradition's been going on for hundreds and thousands of years. So, how do we create that culture here where there doesn't seem to be a physical home for art? Well, I think there is. I think we're learning. I think it's happening. It goes slowly.
What is your ideal vision for arts and culture in Nevada? Because it sounds like you're on the path. Like I feel like you see it, you see where we're going, but I want to see like the full vision. Like I feel like you're on the road and you're bringing us along this road of embracing and like carrying art with us in all of our lives and every part of our lives. So what is the ideal version? I want to hear it from you.
I don't know if I've imagined what an ideal version looks like. I do know that it can we can have so much more interesting lives if we're willing to work at bringing art into our life every day. I mean, I'm thinking about I've been in Eastern Nevada a lot because of this role and also beforehand. What I find in each community, especially like what's going on in Eastern Nevada, is just that somebody or a group of somebodies have devoted some time to make art a priority. And I think that's the short answer to your question. If in all of our little communities there's a somebody or somebodies that makes art a community, a priority, that change is the one that enables it to thrive. In this poet laureate role, I've been all across the state, particularly in April and May. I was reading and teaching and speaking. Some days I woke up, I didn't know where I was. But in every place, there was a group of people who cared about art and they made it come alive where they were. And that bridging, by bringing all those people into the room, makes it makes it real. And so then there's 20 little communities thriving across the West who embrace art, who want art to be more than a noun. They want it to be a verb, something that changes our lives and impacts our lives and speaks for our lives, claims our lives. So yeah, in every place I was, it was radical. Somebody there cared enough to stop time and say, we're going to do this and it's going to matter and pay attention and get on board. I mean, I can't remember when it was, but like in March, I guess, I read out in Winnemucca. Well, they have a volunteer arts council that's been going for 20 or 30 years, all volunteer, nobody gets paid. And basically, they get on the horn when the musicians and the poets and everybody else is coming into town and say, stop what you're doing and come. 60 people came to the Martin to come to a poetry reading in the middle of the week on a school night. The room was packed. I was stunned. And that only happened because people cared. So when people care about it, art, then it becomes reality. And then you get to see what happens. And it's not that, everybody loves art or poetry or whatever their particular expression is. It's that they devoted some of their life to it, their moment, their time, their attention, which is so crucial. This time we're in is just, we're buried with stimulus. And what art gives us is permission to leave that and pay attention to all the good stuff that's in front of us. I mean, you've just seen this incredible expansion at the museum in Northern Nevada, which is huge and wonderful. And David Walker and his team have done great stuff. Same thing out in Eastern Nevada, same thing in Southern Nevada. And you have now more than ever in my life here, there's a confluence of creative, caring people that are really leading this effort to change the complexion of Nevada. I mean, Colette LaBeouf at Black Mountain, all the creative writing programs, North, South, Rural. Um, Everybody has devoted their life to making something better than what they had when they arrived here, so that art is vital and it's real and you can taste it and you can see it in everything that we're doing. It- people want to have a membrane where there's no, you know, where we can't go back and forth, but we don't we thrive when the membrane isn't there and when art is actually just part of what we do. Kids understand this most. We don't ask Kids don't worry about picking up a piece of crayon and writing on a paper and going, is that art? They just do it because they love it. And what happens when we turn into adults is we get so blinded by what it has to be, by our expectations, that we forget that we can also do this and we can make art that is life-saving. I don't go into a room anymore to read without first asking people to exhale and take a breath, because this time is just so fraught with just all the bad stuff. And I ask people to calm down and I read them a poem about kindness or tolerance or forgiveness. And suddenly then there's this pause and people can look up and come back into the world that they left for 2 minutes and be present and be forgiving and be tolerant. So that's really what art does. It can be the light bulb in the middle of your life.
I love that so much. It ties in so well with you as a person, obviously, but also the community care that you do. Um, and I wanted to ask you a little bit more about when you mentioned you're going into these community and every city, every town, every place has somebody that says art is important. We're making time and space for it. And you yourself hosted poetry reading at Sundance for a long, long time. So you understand like what that means to have a space. So can you talk a little bit more? I know we don't have a Sundance anymore, and that makes me very sad. Can you talk a little bit more from that perspective of how like running a reading for 25 years, like um how does that play into what you just talked about now? From like let's say somebody wants to do that in their community. How did you get into it? How do you get people to come and your experience with the poetry reading?
Well, that was my small way of trying to build that community you were talking about. Like you asked, how do you what's your vision for art in Nevada? How is that how does that manifest itself? And, excuse me, I really wanted to see poetry here as part of the fabric of our artistic community. I mean, it's great to drive to Berkeley or San Francisco or LA or whatever and listen to a wonderful evening of fill in the blank. But I knew that for us to thrive, we had to bring the mountain to us. And so I also knew, because I've worked a long time on different books, that there are many fine writers here, and we had to embrace those writers and celebrate those writers and what they had done. So I believe that if we started a series that showcased them and occasionally brought in writers from the region or beyond, it would prosper and people would sell books. I mean, bookstores would sell books and the writers would, become more exposed to their communities. And they would become integral to the discussion about literary arts in Nevada, which is, when I began all this work, that was an oxymoron. When I finished my first anthology of Nevada poetry, which was 90, I think it came out in 91. I was told by the reviewers there isn't enough poetry here to warrant a book, first of all, and then second of all, it's just so terrible that you wouldn't want to do it anyways. I mean, it was really, I was met with some big pushback. Well, those things were wrong. We did publish that book, and many people have since gone on to, find in those poets' work extreme, gratification and solace and importance. And those poets at that moment flourished. That was a long time ago. They're now really well-known poets, many of them. So, it was having a belief that giving a space to poetry would help this idea of poetry flourish, and it did. We met each April, one night a month, one night a week, and sometimes three or four poets a night, and they all got to read, and it soon sort of began to take on a life of its own. And I've turned it over to Lindsay Wilson, who's now doing it and has graciously agreed to take it over. But it was a wonderful opportunity for all these people to bring their own work to the forefront and to be recognized as poets. You know, you don't get to say you're a poet. It's one of those weird things. People have to tell you you're a poet. Saying you're a poet is sort of like, saying, you know, I'm an astronaut. You don't get to do that. You have to go into space first, and then you're an astronaut. So that's the difference. And when people were able to be a poet, read in front of an audience, bring people to tears with their own work or joy or whatever the emotion was, that happened. And then they could spin off and go elsewhere. And and it helped many people grow. And that's what goes on in all these little communities. I mean, it doesn't matter where you are. I went to two literary festivals down south, Boulder City and Henderson, and they're doing their own thing to try and, for the very same reasons, to try and make literature real in those communities, books and art and reading. When all of these things are under siege, it's crucial. It's just so crucial. So, it was our way of saying this matters, and we need to say that, and we need to support it. And we got money to come help people come here and read. Um, and it started kind of a very positive activity that everyone depended upon, which I thought was the most important outcome. People ask can't wait to participate in this series now, and I have nothing to do with it anymore, which is wonderful. I mean, it's an honor. The poets think of this as an honor to read in this series now, which is huge. It's huge. I mean, it's it acknowledges their work as people and their work as artists and the fellowship that comes from that. And there's all people reading and all kinds of poetry being shared. It's not about one kind or the other. The greater point is that this is an open space for people to work and discuss their work.
Thank you. I have a few more questions and then we can officially open up to Q&A from the audience. So my first question is, we're about halfway point in your tenure as Nevada State Poet Laureate. What are some of your plans for the later half of your tenure?
Well, I'm trying to find my way into all the other prisons and camps, which we need to get into one more prison and I think 8 more camps. I just need more arms and legs because I'm recruiting volunteers north-south rural, and they have to go through a training session, get a TP shop, and they can teach. And I have to keep the ones that are teaching. I have to retain those individuals. Um, and then I can't remember if I discussed this with you, but if I did, just tell me that and I'll go on. As a result of this work, one of the donors that's helped us, because we've had some wonderful outside donors step up, they're associated with the Juilliard String Quartet, and they are bringing in a music for the future program, which does their goals are the same as mine, which is to have music be a force of healing on the yard, to lower the temperature, to bring people together to create music that is both people inside and guards, and give people an outcome that they can physically share with their family, and their friends. What I mean by that is a recorded song. On my radio show this weekend, I'm going to talk about that. We were just down in Southern Desert 3 weeks ago, and I watched the very first of this program, very first presentation at Southern Desert, and it's remarkable. And one of the guys, well, all of the guys wrote, and they were. This was the same group that was being taught by Vera Miranda, one of the teachers that's been wonderful to work with, and they wrote all of them lyrics, and the musicians who were there from the Juilliard group took those lyrics and put it into a song, and it's a stunning piece of music. And so that's going to happen. That's going to go on my radio show this weekend. But so their goal, that this Music for the Future program, is to scale this up over the next 3 years. So I'm working with them to help them do that throughout the prison system. And if I can get a person teaching in all the other places, I'll be golden. And I think we can do that. Actually, wait, I know we can do that. It takes time, interest, and willingness, and we have the willingness. So I just need a little more help, and we can make it happen.
That's so
And I'm hopeful that after the book comes out, which will probably be a couple years, that was going to document why this is so important and why it's so life-changing. And when that happens, I think I can, maybe exit.
very exciting. Very exciting. Do you have upcoming events that you want to share?
Uh, I think the Churchill Arts Council has asked me to read next spring, like March, I think, and maybe do a workshop out there at the Oates Park Art Center. And I think also Nevada State University, actually, is what they're called now, has also asked if I would come down there and do a reading and a workshop. And I don't know where else. And just can't remember honestly. But I'm as long as I'm able and I have time, everything I'll do whatever I can.
Okay, so you mentioned, I know we're close to one, but last question, you mentioned a podcast. Can you just share a little bit and tell us more about your podcast?
Yeah. Um, Almost 6 years ago, Britt Curtis, who runs the Holland Project in Reno, which is a all ages music, young adult, mostly young adult music art center, uh, reached out to me and asked me if I do a bi-weekly show on writers and writing. And I kind of hemmed and hawed because I didn't think I could or would be able to write and do something that would be interesting on the radio. So I waited several months and then I finally gave in and said, okay, I'll try it. And that was 6 years ago. And so now we're at episode 131, which is astonishing. And we've talked about everybody and everything. I read a lot of books. I interview writers. I listen to them. I write about things like the music program I just discussed. Um, it's a way again to build that fabric of art throughout the airwaves because this is all broadcast on the internet. I mean, it's live also in the station. Like if you're in Reno, you can listen to it live, but it's broadcast bi-weekly on the internet and then put on Substack for future reference. Um, I think of it as one more piece of the connective tissue that brings anyone who cares about literature into the room, right? So, Black Mountain has had a radio program periodically. Other parts of the state have had one too. Uh, all of this is fodder for the greater idea that you had posed earlier, which was what does that community of an artistically thriving Nevada look like? And if there is a place where this milieu of artistic creation gets shared regularly and thoughtfully, people will gravitate towards it. I mean, there's 1,000 podcasts now, so I'm not trying to compete with anybody. All I'm trying to do is bring what I see out there, and I read from all over the globe into the room, so that voice in Tanzania or Northern Ireland or Central Nevada is held up as something that's really important and they're doing great work and we need to know that and we need to hear it and listen to it. I mean, you know, it's it, it's a way for people to intersect with something that's relatively painless. You got 10 minutes and you're driving your car, turn on the Substack. If you're out on a windy night and you don't have anything to do, turn it on, listen. I just think of it as a place where people can sort of plug in and be connected to things they care about, things they believe in, things that might help them question. Most importantly, be present because we have so much to distract us right now, and none of that helps us. That's all. That just makes us more tense. So I really try to focus if I can on this this being sort of a moment of time outside of time where people can just take these expressions of novels and stories and poems as sort of tonic for the soul. That's how they can just absorb that.
I love the tonic for the soul. And the tonic is just being present, just being here. I love that.
Precisely. Precisely.
Okay, all right. So now I'm out of questions.
Hmm.
So if there's any questions from the audience, please raise your hand or chat them in. Again, you can follow and keep up with all the things that's happening with Shaun on our website. I just dropped a link. I'm gonna let L. Martina Young to speak. You can go ahead and unmute.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, okay. Hello, Sean. I really don't have a question. I simply wish to say an emphatic yes and
Thank,
and thank you.
thank you,
Uh,
my friend.
yes, indeed, my friend, my comrade. This is that's really it. Simply just an emphatic yes and thank you.
Means a lot to me, Jim. Thank you so much.
A pleasure.
Thank you. If there are no more hands, make sure that you are emailing your contact information to Yun. We just put her email in the chat so you can get a signed copy of Razor Wire.
Oh, what happened? Oh, I put it.
Oh, yeah. So we're sending it. Um,
I'm not real savvy on all of these.
oh, it's
What
okay.
what to push, what to
So,
tap.
yeah. So,
I didn't want to lose you.
yeah, no worries. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Are you able to access the chat?
It says chat disabled down at the bottom here. I don't.
So yeah, if you want to
Oh,
copy there, yeah, if you can, if you see it, you just send your contact info to yku@dtca.nv.gov.
I'm trying to. I guess I want to copy that, but there's. Um,
If yeah, you might have to write it down, or you
uh,
can tell me your email and I can send it to you.
can I put in my email to you here?
Let me
I'm not sure.
see if I can.
I'll I'll let you be in control of this.
Okay, there we go. All right, I
There
think
we
I
go.
allowed.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you. I'll do that. How's that?
please. Yes.
Okay, Martina at a poetic body.com. I think that's a poetic. Yes, I think that's there. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sean, for spending your hour with us. I really appreciate you. And there are definitely many moments during a chat that I was like, oh my God, I don't want to cry. It was very powerful. Thank you.
Well, it was an honor to be here, and thank you, Yun and Martina, and anyone else. Yeah, this is life work, all good stuff, all worthwhile.
Yes.
Oh,
Someone will be here to follow in our footsteps, and we're laying the groundwork for them.
thank you. Have a great
Okay,
afternoon, everyone.
take care.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.